So, does a person or a company owe you money and is either ignoring you or refusing to pay? It's a very common situation to be in. And don't worry, there are several simple and fully legal ways of recovering that debt. Now, the method you take will depend on the size of the debt and your ability to prove that you are owed that money, each of which will be covered in this video. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to go through with you a very simple 5-step procedure to recovering a debt with great effect. We'll begin with some of the cheaper and less complicated steps before moving on to legal action and a potential but very effective last resort at the end of the video. Each method has its own benefits and its own requirements, so stay tuned throughout the video so you can make sure that you're making the best choice for you. My name's Cal Sandhu and I'm your travel-sized legal advisor here to help you simplify the legal challenges that people face in their day-to-day lives. So let's get started on the video. Please note before we begin the video, for most debts, you will have until 6 years to make a claim from when the debt became due, or your claim will likely be time barred. So please bear that in mind before we begin. So step 1, write your own letter. Now the first step is crucial and can and should be done prior to seeking any legal representation, which is to make initial contact with the debtor yourself and write them a letter. A debtor is anyone who owes anyone a debt. Never underestimate the value of a good old-fashioned letter. These can have twice the effect of informal communications such as emails and text messages, and can show the debtor that you're taking things seriously, which more often than not can be enough for them to pay up. Now in this letter, make sure to include the following: how much they owe, what the debt is for, and what you've done already so far to try and recover the money. Now, make sure to include certain details in the letter. These are important, such as the parties involved, the names and addresses of you and the debtor, dated copies of all paperwork relating to the debt, and a date when you expect to receive payment. I recommend saying around 14 days. Also, a request for the debtor to put in writing any issue or dispute they have. And finally, details of the steps you'll take if payment isn't received, which should be that you're seeking legal representation and that you will apply for an order for costs, which is the legal term for forcing them to reimburse you for any legal costs. Now, the things to avoid in this letter are the following: heated and lengthy arguments and abuse. This is not the place for that. Your tone should be professional and your language concise. Step 2 is mediation. Now, if you've not been able to resolve the dispute using step 1, the next step you should take is to try to seek mediation. Now, mediation is a service used when parties cannot reach an agreement over a dispute in order to help them negotiate such an agreement. But of course, this requires both parties to acknowledge the existence of the debt. And so if you are unfortunately getting radio silence from the debtor, then this service will likely be of no use. Now, in mediation, someone from a mediation service helps the two sides find a solution to a dispute. It will be quicker and cheaper and less stressful than going to court. Now, the cost of mediation can vary, but mediation fees can be anything from £100 to £1,000 depending on the complexity of your case and the mediator's fees. Now, if you end up making a claim in court for your money, you'll be offered free mediation if your claim is less than £10,000. So, if your claim is less than £10,000, you will have a choice to get independent mediator yourself or make a court claim and get offered free mediation. The courts will expect you to try and resolve the dispute through negotiation or mediation before seeking a judgment in the court. And if one party refuses to mediate, let's say, for example, the person who's owing you money is refusing to negotiate and attend a mediation, then the judge may take this into account when making his or her judgment. So it is best for everyone to attempt mediation. That leads us to step 3, which is get an initial consultation from a debt recovery solicitor. Now, if you're not able to come to an agreement through either of these methods before, the next logical step may be to discuss your case with a solicitor who's experienced in debt recovery. And it's actually not as expensive as you might think to do this. There are a huge amount of debt recovery solicitors out there, as it is one of the most common practices at this time that offers very competitive pricing. So you should have no trouble finding one. Now, what the solicitor will do for you will depend on several factors, including the amount of the debt and whether or not the debt is disputed. So the first thing a solicitor can do for you is write for you a letter to the individual or company that owes you money. This letter is known as a pre-action protocol letter. And yes, of course, it will cost you a fee. It is a precursor to litigation to the courts and basically tells them that legal action may be taken if they don't pay. Now, your lawyer will likely advise this option if the debt is disputed by the debtor. Now, as I learned from my time spent in debt recovery, this letter can produce really quick results and is often the most effective method of forcing the debtor's hands. Without receipt of this solicitor's letter, the debtor will be informed of the serious financial consequences of failing to repay the debt or begin negotiations to settle. Of course, despite this being a very effective solution, it will be better to try and settle before this, as solicitors' fees can get a bit expensive, depending on the complexity of the case, i.e. if it's not straightforward debt. But you could be looking at a ballpark figure of around £100 to £300 as a fee estimate for that letter, depending on the complexity, as I said, and can often be processed in only a matter of days. Now, the second thing a solicitor can do to help you recover your money is to serve an official demand on the debtor. Now, the official term for this is a statutory demand, which you may or may not have heard of. Now, you'll likely use a statutory demand over the previously discussed letter where the debt is not disputed. As such, a statutory demand does not involve going to court, and so you will avoid the long wait times and court fees. A statutory demand can be expensive though, as it involves engaging a service processor to physically serve the notice on the debtor. If the debtor ignores statutory demand, which has a 21-day time limit, or if they're unable to repay the money, you are able then to apply to court to make the debtor bankrupt if you are owed £5,000 or more. Or if your debtor is a company, you can get them liquidated if the value of the debt is over £750. As I said though, the costs are high and you may not get all of your money back. So get legal advice before doing this if you are still unsure. So those will be your two main options when it comes to legal action from a solicitor. As for the solicitors themselves, they will probably work to a fixed fee, which should be on their website. If they're charging an hourly rate, this is usually around £50 an hour. Now that leads us on to step 4, which is using the online money claim service, or MCOL. Now, if you've tried writing to the debtor and are still not happy after the deadline on it is passed, you can contact Money Claims Online. It is an alternative way to make a small claim instead of having to go to county court. Money Claims Online is cheaper than going through the county courts and tends to be much faster, so I really do suggest trying this first. To do this, you need to tell Money Claims Online how much you wish to claim, why you believe the money is owed to you, and give them a timeline of the events. Now, the fee for this service varies depending on how much your claim is for. The most you can claim on this service is £100,000. Anything above that must be dealt with in the courts. However, claims above £10,000 will still attract significantly high fees. You also may have to go to a court hearing if the other person or business still denies owing you the money. If they admit owing you the money or do not respond, you can take them to court to order them to pay without a hearing, therefore avoiding court. In addition, if you have a complicated claim, you may struggle to file it using this service, as there is a 1080 character limit on the box for you explaining your claim, so it doesn't really lend itself fully to those situations which can't be explained easily. So to use Money Claims Online service, you'll need to register first and then head to this page on the gov.uk website to begin your claim. If, however, your claim is over £10,000 and is particularly complex and touches on several different issues or parties, you may still have to go to county court, which leads us nicely on to step 5. So taking them to court, this is normally used as a last resort, but if it does come to this, then the courts have the power to order payment or seek enforcement, such as through a high court enforcement agent, which you may already know. It's a good idea to seek independent legal advice before you do this, before you go to court. And unless you yourself are extremely well versed in the complex civil procedure rules, I would hire the service of a professional trained solicitor to file your claim to court. There are strict procedure rules, deadlines that you need to know, follow, and it's advised to use a professional for this. Now, if the claim is not disputed, it should be quite quick and straightforward to issue a claim form and obtain a judgment. It will be more time consuming, however, if your claim is still being disputed or you need to enforce a judgment because your debtor is not playing ball and still refuses to pay. If your claim is disputed, you may need to go to a court hearing as well. It's important to remember, however, that it can take months for a case to go to court, and there's no guarantee that you'll win the case even if it does go to court. You may have to pay the other side's costs if you do lose the case. And also, if the other side can't pay, for example, if they're bankrupt or not working, it can be really hard to get your money back. Now, where claims are issued in court for more than £10,000, the general rule is the losing party will be ordered to pay the winning party's legal costs as well as their own. If a claim is for less than £10,000, it is likely to be allocated to a small claims track where only court fees are recoverable if you win. So if you win, you'll still have to pay your own lawyer's fees, but you may be able to recover court fees. If your debtor is a limited company, you should bear in mind that there may not be any assets in that company's name. This may not stop you obtaining a judgment against them, but it may be really difficult if you need to take further action to make them pay or to enforce them to pay if they have no assets. Warning, if you do choose to go through the process of going through the courts and obtaining a county court judgment, mistakes or overlooked issues or any lack of diligence can result in a claim being successfully defended and you being ordered to pay the debtor's costs. So make sure to hire competent legal representation when possible. Final warning then to remember, an important one: if you've exhausted all options and it's looking like you're going to have to go to county court, before filing a claim, consider whether the debtor has the means to pay you if you win the case. If the debtor is insolvent or has no assets, obtaining a court judgment may not result in payment at all and will be a massive waste of time and money. Okay, then, to summarise everything, recovering a debt in the UK is a step-by-step process that begins with informal attempts to resolve the matter, and these are really important, and then may escalate to formal legal action if necessary. It's essential to consider the costs, the risks, and the potential outcomes I've given to you at each stage, and to seek legal advice if you're unsure on how to proceed. That concludes this video, guys. I hope you have learned something here, and if you have taken anything of value from any of what I've said, then please do like and maybe subscribe to my channel. If you have any of the tips or suggestions that work for you, please post them down below in the comments. Now, please be aware that while my content can and should be taken as reliable legal advice in general, this content is not a substitution for specific legal advice to your particular situation, and so should not be relied upon alone. And I would implore you and all viewers to consult with their own lawyers for their specific legal needs.